So I made a video the other day about how I thought that this whole console marketing of performance was a fugazi, simply because those same console games, when you bring them to PC, you can run most of them on a PC with a $50 GPU and in some cases paired with a $30 CPU. What I want to do is I want to do a deep dive. This is going to be a longer video, so stay tuned. Just, fasten your seatbelts. If you're driving, connected to your Bluetooth in your car or something, let's go. So the PlayStation Studios store here on Steam has about 20 games listed under it. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and see if these games meet the $50 GPU criteria and if they meet that $40 CPU criteria as well. So the GPU that I'm going to go with today is the GTX 1060. For those of you who know what the GTX 1060 is about, this is a GPU that was a very interesting time saver for the most part. I think it just had a really good price to performance ratio at the time, and you can get one here on eBay for $50. If you want to splurge, maybe you can get one for like $69. The point is not to say go buy yourself a 1060 because it's mostly outdated. The point is just to say that you can run these games on a potato if you wanted to. Now, I'm sure somebody would say, well, but it doesn't run at 60 FPS for most of these games and A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But to that I respond, Marvel Spider-Man on PS4 was a great game at 30 FPS. So shut up. Good. Now that we've actually gotten that out of the way, and I say that not to necessarily be rude, but because I'm sick of that argument, because many of us played that game on console and it was our favorite game ever, and somehow we've now become, FPS snobs. So please get that out of here. Now, Ghost of Tsushima, it's minimum requirements, and that's what we're going to go for. We're going to go for the minimum requirements because, again, we're looking at $100 in CPU and GPU. Its minimum requirements is asking for an i3-7100 or a Ryzen 3 1200. I'm going for the Ryzen 5 5500, which is obviously better than both these particular, CPUs that are listed on here. And that 5500 is basically the Ryzen 5 5500. If you wanted to buy it used, would be about $50. But what if we actually, that's the CPU that I'm looking at. I mean, it's twice the amount. But what if you wanted, say, that, i3-7100, what would you have to pay for it right now in the used market, right? If you actually went ahead and said, okay, let me go ahead and take a look at this particular CPU. On the used market right now, that CPU is going for around, you won't believe it, it's going for around $15. And I didn't say 50, I said $15. I was being nice when I said $50 CPU and, $50 GPU. It's $15. The challenge you have, though, is finding a motherboard to run it. This is why I would probably not recommend it, but you never know. If you're finding the CPUs and with the saturation in the market, you might be able to find the GPUs as well. So $45 for your core components, and you can run Ghost of Tsushima. Tsushima ran on PS4, so not really surprising there at the end of the day. Let's look at Horizon Forbidden West. This is a game that had a little bit more in terms of juice. Like, yeah, this game was asking for, but it can run on a GTX 1650, 4 gigs of VRAM or 5500 XT and an i5 8600. So let's look at an i3 8100. An i3 8100 on eBay at the moment. Let's look at what that would cost us. An i3 8100 is the CPU that it's actually asking for. So i3 8100, I don't know why I put 13 8100. Let's put an I there. It's a $25 CPU. So for a $25 CPU, you can run, according to Nixus, Gorilla and Nixus, not me. Don't point at, according to them, with a $24 CPU, right? Look at it right here, ladies and gentlemen, with a $24 CPU. And what is a GPU? A GTX 1650. Let's look at a GTX 1650 so that we can be very certain as to what we're looking at. So GTX eBay, GTX 1650. So GTX, sorry, I can't type here. 1650, $85. So $85 you can buy. So, well, I mean, 50, so $100, right? So 85 plus, how much was that CPU just now? 85 plus 25. Okay, 105. All right, I give. Okay, I was wrong. Sorry, 105 ish. All right, good. We're good. If you can give me that $5, I'll be all right. Okay, thank you guys so much. So we're still sitting at about $105 to be able to run the, one of the prettiest games that PlayStation has made. Helldivers is quite old school. I've looked at it, by the way. If you guys are wondering, let's go back to the list. I've looked at Helldivers. It's really old school. We'll meet that criteria. Let's look at Ratchet and Clank. Now, this was the one game that was supposedly only possible by using the PlayStation 5, right? Because of the SSD and all that stuff. All right. Anyways, the CPU is requiring is an i3-8100, which you just looked at as $25 used, and a GTX 960, which is a $50 GPU. The GTX 9, well, actually a little less, but you can get a 1060 for $50. So around like $75-$80 worth of core components, you can basically go ahead and leverage this. And here's the beautiful thing: today's technology actually can support some of these older, GPUs. FSR technology is actually quite ubiquitous in the way that it works. So it can work on even NVIDIA GPUs, and you can use them to get some upscaling going on for yourself. This is The Last of Us Part 1. RX 470, 4 gig VRAM, 16 gigs of RAM, a GTX 970, which, you could use a 1050 Ti, whatever it is. There's just so much posted on here. And even for the recommended settings, you can use a 5700. But like I said, we're going to stick with the, minimum specs. A Ryzen 5 1500 or an i7 4770K. The i7 4770K. What does that do for us in perspective? Let me look for it right here. So i7 7700K. This is how you do it, guys. You go in and 4700K. Sorry, not 7700K. I take that back. I have a 7700. Well, not me anymore. One of my kids inherited it from me. 4700. Is it 4700? 4770K. I'm sorry. 4770K. And it's a $40 CPU. You can get it in some cases for about $22 used, $29 depending on what you're looking at. So I think we are still on the money in that regard, that these potatoes, according to the developers, are still able to play these games that we played when they were 30 FPS, by the way, and we called them really great games. Uncharted 4, one of my favorite games that has come out of PlayStation Studios overall. I pre-ordered this game for the full. I walked into GameStop. I've never pre-ordered a game like that before. I walked up into GameStop after playing the Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 because my PlayStation 4 purchase was a bundle. I played all 3 of them, and I was like, I gotta play 4. So this is asking us for Ryzen 3 1200 or an i5 4430, which is probably around the $20-something mark, but we'll call it $50, and a GTX 960. This is quite interesting, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you. God of War 2018. We looked at Spider-Man in my other video, and I can almost tell you off the top of my head what its requirements are. This is an i5 2500K. This is like a $30 CPU. It's a classic. It's a really good CPU. i5 2500. Let's go in for this for educational purposes. Let's look at an i5 2500K. I think I may have one more left. I don't know. I think I may have one more of those left. I was like, okay, $13. Yeah, you can buy for as little as $10 if you can get a CPU that will power it. That's the challenge. But you can buy one of these old Optiplexes that has a CPU and everything in there. You can put your hard drive for $34. You can put your hard drive in there, your SD card, and you could build this PC for like $100, and it's gonna play. It's gonna play Uncharted. God of War actually. It will play Uncharted too. I mean, the God of War requirements seem to be slightly higher than the Uncharted requirements at the end of the day. You play them at 30 FPS though, don't get me wrong. But again, we played these games at 30 FPS and we loved them. So I want to make sure that we caveat that. Shall we do Days Gone? Let's do Days Gone. Let's see what Days Gone is asking for. Days Gone is asking for GTX 780 and i5 2500K. I want to safely assume that we meet these requirements with ease with our 50 CPU, 50 GPU, metric. Horizon Zero Dawn probably will reach that metric as well, which we played the game at 30 FPS, i5 2500, GTX 700. At some point, it starts getting generic based on the, generation of games that were made. Let's look at Miles just for, and then we'll look at Returnal and we'll call it Gucci. We'll just, we'll close up shop here. Something went wrong. What's going on? Steam doesn't like you browsing a bunch of games some days. There we go. Here we're looking at an i3 4160 and a GTX 950. So we meet this requirement on RX 470. We meet the GPU requirement with the GTX 1060, and with the i3 4160. Just to remove doubt, let's go ahead and look at the i3 4160. i3 4160, and we're looking at $20 for this CPU. Ideally, you'll be in a better position to buy like that Optiplex that I just showed you guys just now if you really wanted to potato your way through it. But yeah, again, this is just more educational to see if you really do need all of this hardware to basically jam, these games. Let's look at Returnal. I think Returnal will be able to be. It's got a lot of. Returnal has a lot of textures. It will require more. Look at it. Yeah, very, very specific. We want the GTX 1060 6 gigs, which is a $50 GPU. I should have it open somewhere. The GTX 1060 on eBay. $50. You can buy it for about $50 right now if you actually wanted one. I wouldn't recommend it, but just, again, a GTX 1060 6 gigs and an RX 580 8 gigs. And yeah, if you want an i5 6400, this is probably where I think you're more than likely going to be in a jam. But again, like I've said, I've suggested $50 brand newer model CPUs, $60 in some cases. So that you can get through it. So that's where you're going to find, some weird stuff. And if you want to fire a bunch of textures, then you probably need to be in the 2070 range for the recommended settings. But again, like I said, we're doing the minimum requirements, which basically only tests the substance of the game. So in a deep dive, for the most part, as deep as I'm interested in going before getting bored, you can play any of these PlayStation games with the potato PC. A used PC on your marketplace for $300. Take some air, blow out the dust. At $300, basically, you can play these things for like 30 FPS. So when people make fun of the Series S, I kind of have to wonder, because the Series S is actually more powerful than a lot of those setups that I actually showed you guys. I guess its RAM has been its biggest kicker. But other than that, you could still manage and play some of these games even at 30 FPS on the Series S. And so I'm always shocked when people make fun of the Series S, like, oh, the Series S. And developers have basically been developing some of the best looking games on hardware that is not even close to, that will never come close to the Series S. Ever. Look at Arkham Knight. Let me give you one example before I close shop. This is a third-party game. i5 750. This CPU is not close to the Series S. The Series S's CPU is actually more. Memory, 6 gigs of RAM. I don't know what kind of alchemy they did. GeForce 660 or Radeon 7870. So at the end of the day, I think it's more of a, in my opinion anyways, the developer's vision to basically bring the game and maybe how much money and time and resources they have. That require this conversation about, oh yeah, you need all this performance. You don't. A good game's a good game. Thanks for watching. Peace out.